Hello. In this episode, I am going to solve two problems from our exercise sets. Exercise set 19.2, problems 12 and 17. When I do these, I'm going to explain, I'm kind of try to get down deep into explaining my strategy and how I am applying and deciding on rules. So this presumes that you have studied the rules, that you have a basic sense of how to do a proof, but that you still have a lot of questions, or maybe you're just not seeing things correctly, or just to help, understand what the thought process is. Okay, so let's start with number 12 here. And the first thing I do whenever I try to solve a proof is just to read over the entire thing and try to make some sense of it, try to see if I recognize any patterns, maybe find out where the starting points are, so forth. I also look at the conclusion and see how that's connected to the premises. So line 1, we have a disjunction, A or if B then C. Line 2, if not A, then if not H, then J. Line 3, not H or B, and line 4, not A and I. Finally, our conclusion, J or C. Okay. Now, one thing I think is important is finding your starting place. Now, I don't know, I didn't solve this problem ahead of time. I think I enjoy solving it in front of you. I think that is more helpful because then I can explain what it means to figure this stuff out. The one thing that is often useful is looking for lines that either have a single letter or a single letter with a negation, or single letters with a conjunction in particular, or some combination of that. And the reason why those are good starting places is because we know for sure what the truth value of the individual statements are. So if not A is true, we know that A is false, right? So just looking at this, we know that A is false, and we know that I is true. Everything else up here, looking at it on its own, is a lot more ambiguous. Like if we look at this alone directly, I can't figure out if H is true or false, or if B is true or false. I just don't know. I know that either H is false or B is true, but that's a lot of questions about the individual statements. Looked at on its own, line 2, we don't know anything about the individual statements. Line 4, on the other hand, it is a solid starting point. I should say that there will be arguments where that's not where you should start. There may be single letters and the starting point is elsewhere, where there's nothing you can do with those single letters at the beginning, and it's not until later in the argument that you'll use them. Sometimes an argument doesn't have any letters like this, any solid, unambiguous truth values for statements. Sometimes an argument will be entirely about the conditionals and so forth. But especially on these earlier problems, we often have some kind of starting point, so that's where we'll start today. Second, it's always important to look at the conclusion. The conclusion, we're saying that if the premises are true, the conclusion must be true as well, but there's some kind of gap. Like we don't know, there's going to be some steps to get from here to the conclusion. And so it's often useful to think, well, where does the conclusion come from? And because this says J or C, well, we see J is the consequent of this conditional, and we see that C is the consequent of this conditional, right? Now, at this point, it's often also helpful to think about, well, how would I pull the C and the J out of there, especially into a disjunction? And this is where knowing your rules well is very helpful, because you can recognize the patterns quickly. One pattern that you might recognize, so here, let's look at this. We have a conditional, not H, therefore J. We have this other conditional, B, therefore C. And we have this conclusion, J or C, like that, the J That's where J must come from. That's where C must come from, because there's no other J or C up here. So we see we can like follow that back. Now, what does this look like? And it may not look like anything to you, but if the more you practice and the more you study the rules, the more it will start to look like something. And in this case, this is going to start looking like a constructive dilemma. And if it is constructive dilemma, what we would need is a not H or B. That would fill in a constructive dilemma. So by recognizing that pattern, you know that, oh, this is now the missing link. Let's go look for it. And so that, like, what you then see is that, all right, if this is what if I need this sentence to get to my conclusion, now I have to treat this as a conclusion, and I want to see where I can get this. So we go back to our premises and we ask, well, where can I get? Oh, shoot, it's right there. This is often what's going to happen. It's like, instead of looking at the premises and asking, how do I use that? Instead, by working backward, you're like, well, I know I need to find this. And then you go back and you're like, oh, there it is. I don't even have to figure it out. I don't even have to build that statement. It's just already there. Then you really know that you're on the right track because the pieces start coming together. It's like you're an investigator. It's like you're a Sherlock Holmes or an anthropologist who's looking at various pieces of something that they're studying, and suddenly, like, everything starts coming together. And notice that we haven't even started doing the proof yet. We've just been thinking about it. And that is generally the most important step in solving any kind of problem, is first just thinking through the structure of the problem, then begin working on the solution. Okay, my page jumped around here. Next. So now we know we need this. We already have it. The last thing we need then is we need to get these sentences, these statements out of the argument here, because we can't use constructive dilemma on these sections when they are still connected to this. So we got to figure that out somehow. Now notice how both statements 1 and 2 have an A in various ways. Here is A or if B then C. One of these must be true. And we know that in order to pull one side of a disjunction out, we could use, again, it's helpful to know the rules here, we could use disjunctive syllogism to pull this side out. And for that, we would need a not A. We also need a not A to activate this conditional and to pull this down. Well, here's a not A. So let's begin with a simplification on line 4 to give us not A for simplification. 6. We can use not A then on line 1 with disjunctive syllogism to give us if B, then C from 1 to 5 modus ponens. No, sorry, disjunctive syllogism. Got ahead of myself. Then we can use not A to plug into 2, not H, therefore J. And that's from 2, 5 modus ponens. Then I'm going to put lines 6 and 7 on the same line. I'm going to go not H, therefore J, and if B, then C. That is 7, 6, conjunction. 9, now I'm going to take this not H or B, and I'm going to use constructive dilemma. So from 8 and 3, constructive dilemma, I get J or C. That's that. We have our conclusion. We're done. Now, before I move on, I just want to show one common mistake that I see. And some of you are past this now, but you may have asked, well, why can't I just, at line 5, why do I need to use this? Why can't I just simplify line 1 and pull down if B then C? Or why can't I just simplify line 2 and do H, therefore J? Are those valid moves? And the answer is no. That's an incorrect use of simplification. Simplification can only be done on a premise with a conjunction in it, because the conjunction says the left side is true and the right side is true independently. And so if this was an and, then I could take, that would be legal to pull that down, because I know this conjunction is telling me that the right side is true. But without that, there's no way I can do that, because I don't know if that side is true. I need the not A first. Okay. Let's look at this last one. So again, let's read through this. If not S, then, this is many layers deep, J and I are S. Second, J or, if J or A and B is true, then not N and not O. Finally, S and Z. And our conclusion is not N and J. Now this, even though this has fewer premises, this strikes me as a more complicated problem. And it's because, I think it's because of how complicated all of this mess is. Because now I have to figure out how to pull these statements out of here. So what do I need to pull out of here? I need to pull a not N out. And I need a J. I need to pull the J out. Ooh, it's kind of messy. And so we have J in a couple of places. And at first we don't know which one we need to pull from. And I kind of already get the sense of what we're going to do here, but let's just walk through. If you don't, so sometimes you won't know, you won't be able to walk back. You won't see how to solve the problem starting at the end and moving forward. In those cases, sometimes it's just useful to ask, well, what can I do? And in this case, like, one of the easiest things to do is look at line 3 and say, well, I can simplify line 3. What's more useful to me? Now, the S has some clear applicability. I can take an S and use it for modus ponens here. What can I do with the Z? Nothing. There's nothing I can do with the Z because there's no Z's up here. Now, maybe there's some problems out there where creative use of the Z will be the key to the problem. I don't think that's going to be the case here. We can just simplify S from line 3. Then we take this S and plug it into line 1 with modus ponens. So 1, 4 modus ponens to give us J and I or S. Okay. Now from this, remember, in order to get not N and J, if I can get J on a line by itself, and I can get not N on a line by itself, then I can just use conjunction to give me not N and J. And here we have an opportunity to get J by itself through simplification. All right. Now, I think here's the tricky part. How do I get not N and not O? In order to get this, I need to extract the consequent. And the way to extract the consequent is with modus ponens. But for modus ponens, I need J or not A and B. All right. Let me write this out here. Now, I want you to pause this video in a moment here and see if you can figure it out for yourself. And if you want to, let me just kind of give you a little hint for this. If we have this, not J, J or A and B, therefore, not N and not O. I want you to see if you can get from what we have here just to this sentence. Can you build that sentence? And again, you cannot simplify the left side here. That's not, you need a conjunction, and that's not a conjunction. All right, so go ahead and pause the video. Don't continue until you have either figured out the answer or think you have figured out the answer. Please don't give up. At least come up with something, even if it's wrong. Then we can address it. All right, we're going to begin again now. So we're trying to get from what we have here to this. Where do we get the A and B? There's no A and B up here except for the place that we were trying to get to. There's no place to pull it from. Well, my friends, this is where we use addition. We know that J is true. This says that at least one of these is true. We don't know anything about A and B. Our argument doesn't give us anything about A and B, but we know that J is true. We know that J is true because of line 6. So if we know that J is true, we know that this sentence is definitely true, even if A and B is not true. So for this, remember addition looks like this. We start with P, then we get to add anything we want to, so long as it's combined with a disjunction, with an or. And in this case, P is our J, and Q is our A and B. So we're going to write J or A and B from 6 addition. From there, now we have our antecedent. This is the same thing as this. So we can write as our consequent not N and not O. From 2, 7, modus ponens. Now we simplify to get not N. And then we can just use conjunction, not N and J. And that's all there is to it. Yeah, let me know. See if you can figure this out. That's a little sloppy. This board, I'm never going to get great handwriting on this board. But yeah, take a look at this, study it, and then let me know if you have any questions. I'll talk to you later.